We're back to read more Jane Austen. And I was struck by this idea of what Jane Austen would have sounded like. And it sounds like, from my limited research, she would have had a Hampshire accent. And I can't find anything else about it. Just a Hampshire accent from the Regency era, but I thought it'd be fun to put it out there and see if anybody can figure out any more about what she would have sounded like, because I think accents are so cool. And while I was researching that, I found this really cool video by Professor John Mullen, Mullan, Mullen. And he is the editor of the Oxford World's Classic Edition of Sense and Sensibility. Oh my god, is that the one I have? No, not edited by him. Well, he has edited one of the Oxford World's Classic Editions of Sense and Sensibility, and he also discusses Jane Austen's innovative use of free indirect speech. So this is a concept that I just learned about from John, from this video, that I will link below. And subscribe and like and comment on this video and check out the links below. And John is a professor of English at University College London. And he was talking about this free indirect speech and how Jane Austen, this was not a term used yet. She invented it. And he was like, the audacity that she had to do it. Did he say audacity? He said something like the balls on this chick, basically, is what this Oxford professor was saying. The absolute balls on Jane Austen, where she was getting her ideas out through her characters. And the characters were inventing all these ideas, but it was really, I think I'm saying that right. It was really Jane Austen's ideas, but she was getting them out through her characters, and her characters' kind of ideas and everything create a narrative. I'm still learning, but free indirect speech, we can learn more about it, but I'll put the link below. It's like a 3-minute video. You guys can check it out. And I also started a new playlist on YouTube called All About Jane Austen, and there's a lot of videos on there. That one was specifically, the one that I was talking about was specifically about Sense and Sensibility. Eleanor is kind of the narrator and narrator of this book, kind of, and we're just learning about society through her, but Jane Austen is speaking through Eleanor and the characters, which I think is so interesting. Is Marianne a hypocrite? Is another, wow, I'm right here, Jane Austen Sense and Sensibility. Adding that to the playlist. Save to playlist about Jane Austen. Cool. I didn't really get any further about what she sounded like. Maybe I should ask AI. Because there's audibly, you can audibly. What did Jane Austen sound like? What was her accent like? Can you respond to me out loud? Can you respond to me out loud? I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to use it. Go. Jane Austen yes. Voice sample. Yes. Working on the generating a voice sample now. Working. Download Jane Austen accent. Starting download. Okay, let's get back to this. Oh, open. That was fast.
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
That's really bad. Okay, that's kind of terrifying. Okay, sorry AI. Do you guys apologize and thank AI? I do. Thank you AI, sorry. That sounded so crazy and digital, and it was a man. I did not like that. Okay. Let's shake that terrifying audio sample off. And we're at chapter 8. Poor Marianne. Absolutely so sad, Marianne. Willoughby has tortured her and was like, did we really even vibe that well? I mean, I'm actually engaged to somebody and I'm probably going to be married. So Marianne is heartbroken. This is basically where we're at. And Eleanor's heartbroken with her, and Marianne wants to leave London like immediately. And they're like, we can't, Mrs. Jennings, blah, blah, blah. So I think Mrs. Jennings is about to come into the picture. Whoa. All right, let's read. Let us read today's. Get up. Okay. Mrs. Jennings came immediately to their room on her return, and without waiting to have her request of admittance answered, opened the door and walked in with a look of real concern. They're both just laying down on the bed crying, and there's letters everywhere. How do you do, my dear? Said she in a voice of great compassion to Marianne, who turned away her face without attempting to answer. She said, don't look at me. How is she, Miss Dashwood? Poor thing, she looks very bad. Mrs. Jenny, I love this. She looks very bad. No wonder. It is but too true. He is to be married very soon. A good-for-nothing fellow. I have no patience with him. Mrs. Taylor told me of it half an hour ago, and she was told it by a particular friend of Miss Grey herself, else I am sure I should not have believed it. And I was almost ready to sink as well. Sink as it was. What? I was almost ready to sink as it was. Well, said I, all I can say is that if it is true he has used a young lady of my acquaintance abominably ill, and I wish with all my soul his wife may plague his heart out. Oh, I'm gonna write that one down. Plague his heart out. And so I shall always say, my dear, you may depend on it. I have no notion of men's going on in this way, and if I ever met him again, I will give him such a dressing as he has not had this many a day. Such a dressing. Can we just look up what a dressing... Ugh, that AI thing was still up on my phone. Ugh. What was a dressing? Give someone a dressing. I think it's just going to be talking about clothing. What does she mean? As an insult. Come on. Come on. Come on, Google. To give someone a dressing meant to scold or reprimand them severely. Oh. Give us an example. A parent scolding a child for misbehaving. Okay. God. Love to hear that. Loved. I hope Mrs. Jennings and Willoughby encounter one another. We can hear this dressing. She said, such a dressing as he has not had this many a day. But there is no one comfort, my dear Miss Marianne. He is not the only young man in the world worth having, and with your pretty face, you will never want admirers. Well, poor thing, I won't disturb her any longer, for she had better have her cry out at once and have done with it. Have a good cry and be done with this man. The Perry and Sandersons luckily are coming tonight, you know, and that will amuse her. Doubt it. She then went away, walking on tiptoe out of the room, as if she supposed her young friend's affliction could be increased by noise. I love Mrs. Jennings. That's so funny. She said, sorry, I'm just gonna... She's crying. That's so funny to me, this visual. Marianne, to the surprise of her sister, determined on dining with them. This is great. She's perking up. Elinor even advised her against it, but no, she would go down. She could bear it very well, and the bustle about her would be less. Yeah, just face the music. Good for you, Marianne. Elinor, pleased to have her governed for a moment by such a motive, though believing it hardly possible that she could sit out the dinner, said no more, and adjusting her dress for her as well as she could while Marianne still remained on the bed, was ready to assist her into the dining room as soon as they were summoned to it. When there, though looking most wretchedly, she ate more and was calmer than his sister had expected. Had she tried to speak, or had she been conscious of half Mrs. Jennings' well-meant but ill-judged attentions to her, this calmness could not have been maintained, but not a syllable escaped her lips, and the abstraction of her thoughts preserved her in ignorance of everything that was passing before her. Eleanor, who did justice to Mrs. Jennings' kindness, though its effusion were often distressing and sometimes almost ridiculous, made her those acknowledgments, and returned her those civilities which her sister could not make or return for herself. Right, she said, and Marianne is very happy to be here too. And Marianne thinks so also. And I'm sure if Marianne could talk, she would absolutely say the same thing. She totally agrees with you. The good friend saw that Marianne was unhappy, and felt that everything was due to her which might make her at all less so. What? Everything was due to her which might make her at all less so. She treated her... One day I'm just going to go sentence by sentence. But it would take millennia. Marianne, no. She treated her, therefore, with all the indulgent fondness of a parent towards a favourite child on the last day of its holidays. Marianne was to have the best place by the fire, was tempted to eat by every delicacy in the house, and to be amused by the relation of all the news of the day. Had not Eleanor, in the sad countenance of her sister, seen a check to all mirth, she could not have been entertained by Mrs. Jennings' endeavours to cure a disappointment in love by a variety of sweet meats and olives and a good fire. As soon, however, as the consciousness of all this was forced by continual repetition on Marianne, she could stay no longer. She, with a hasty exclamation of misery with a capital M, misery, assigned to her sister not to follow her, she directly got up and hurried out of the room. She lasted a good long while, good for her. Poor soul, cried Mrs. Jennings, as soon as she was gone. How it grieves me to see her. And I declare, if she's not gone away without finishing her wine, and the dried cherries, too, she must be really not well. She can't even finish her dried cherries and her wine? Yikes. Lord, nothing seems to do her any good. Right. I am sure if I knew of anything she would like, I would send all over the town for it. Well, it is the oddest thing to me that a man should use such a pretty girl so ill. Really. But when there is plenty of money on one side, and next to none on the other, Lord bless you, they care no more about such things. The lady, then, Miss Grey, I think you called her, is very rich? £50, 50,000 pounds. Let's just do, I mean, I know we did it for Darcy, but this is a new book and a new time, and we'll just see. £50,000 Regency era. Wow. 5 million, over $5 million. 50,000 pounds in the 1800s is equivalent in purchasing power of about $5 million today. 5.3. Wow. 50,000 pounds, my dear. Did you ever see her? A smart, stylish girl, they say, but not handsome. I remember her aunt very well, Biddy Henshaw. I love that name. Biddy? Is that short for something? That's so cute. Biddy. Itty bitty. Biddy Henshaw. She married a very wealthy man, but the family are all rich together. 50,000 pounds, and by all accounts it won't come before it's wanted, for they say she's all to pieces. No wonder, dashing about with his curricle at hunters, well, it don't signify talking, but when a young man, be he who he will, comes and makes love to a pretty girl and promises marriage, he has no business to fly off from his word only because he grows poor and a richer girl is ready to have him. Why don't he in such a case sell his horses, let his house, turn off his servants, and make a thorough reform at once? I warrant you, Miss Marianne would have been ready to wait till matters came round, but that won't do nowadays. Nothing in the way of pleasure can ever be given up by the young men of this age. Nothing in the way of pleasure can ever be given up by the young men of this age. Do you know what kind of a girl Miss Grey is? Is she said to be amiable? I never heard any harm of her. Indeed, I hardly ever heard her mentioned, except that Mrs. Taylor did say this morning that one day Miss Walker hinted to her that she believed Mr. and Mrs. Elson would not be sorry to have Miss Grey married, for she and Mrs. Elson could never agree. And who are the Elsons? Her guardians, my dear. But now she is of age and may choose for herself, and a pretty choice she has made. What now? After pausing a moment, your poor sister has gone to her own room, I suppose, to moan by herself. Is there nothing one can get to comfort her? My poor dear, it seems quite cruel to let her be alone. Well, by and by we shall have a few friends, and that will amuse her a little. What shall we play at? She hates whist, I know, but is there no round game she cares for? She likes to play the piano by herself, is what she likes to do. She likes to sing and play the piano by herself, and she loves talking to Willoughby about everything that they both like together. That's what she likes to do, okay? Dear Mom, this kindness is quite unnecessary. Marianne, I dare say, will not leave her room again this evening. I shall persuade her, if I can, to go early to bed, for I'm sure she wants rest. I believe that would be the best for her. Let her name her own supper and go to bed. Lord, no wonder she has been looking so bad and so cast down this last week or two, for this matter, I suppose, has been hanging over her head as long as that. And so the letter came today, finished it, poor soul. I am sure if I had had a notion of it, I would not have joked about it for all my money. But then, you know, how should I guess such a thing? Ma'am. Ma'am. How could I have guessed such a thing? I made sure of its being nothing but a common love letter, and you know young people like to be laughed at about them. Lord, how concerned Sir John and my daughters will be when they hear of it. If I had had my senses about me, I might have called it Conduit Street in my way home and told them of it, but I shall see them tomorrow. It would be unnecessary, I'm sure, for you to caution Mrs. Palmer and Sir John against even naming Mr. Willoughby, or making the slightest allusion to what has passed before my sister. Their own good nature must point out to them the real cruelty of appearing to know anything about it when she was present, and the less that may ever be said to myself on the subject, the more my feelings will be spared, as you, my dear madam, will easily believe. Oh, Lord, yes, that I do indeed. I must be terrible for you to hear it talked of, and as for your sister, I am sure I would not mention a word about it to her for the world. You saw I did not all dinner time, nor more would Sir John nor my daughters, for they are all very thoughtful and considerate, especially if I give them a hint, as I certainly will. For my part, I think the less that is said about such things, the better. The sooner 'tis blown over and forgot. And what good does talking ever do, you know? This is all her talking. This is all this pages. In this affair, I can only do harm. More so, perhaps, than in many cases of a similar kind, for it has been attended by circumstances which, for the sake of everyone concerned in it, make it unfit to become the public conversation. I must do this justice to Mr. Willoughby. He has broken no positive engagement with my sister. Law, my dear, don't pretend to defend him. No positive engagement indeed, after taking her all over Allenham House and fixing on the very rooms they were to live in hereafter. She's got a point. He did take her all around that house and said, where are we going to live? Like, this is just a fun game to him. And she gave him a lock of her hair. Golly. And all for his sister's sake, could not press the subject farther, and she hoped it was not required of her for Willoughby's, since, though Marianne might lose much, he could gain very little by the enforcement of the real truth. After a short silence on both sides, Mrs. Jennings, with all her natural hilarity, burst forth again. Nothing does anything by talking, but I am going to talk a lot. Okay. All of this is going to be her talking. It's just really funny to see it. Well, my dear, 'tis a true saying about an ill wind, for it will be all the better for Colonel Brandon. He will have her at last, aye, that he will. Mind me now, if they ain't A-N''T, ain't married by midsummer. Lord, how he'll chuckle over this news. I hope he will come tonight. It will be all to one a better match for your sister. 2,000 a year without debt or drawback, except the little love child, indeed. Aye, I had forgot her. But she may be prenticed out at small cost, and then what does it signify? Delaford is a nice place, I can tell you. Exactly what I call a nice old-fashioned place. Ooh, there's something in the back about that. What chapter we're on? A nice old-fashioned. Old-fashioned suggests some criticism for the mania for improvement represented by John Dashwood. Austen knew and approved of the improved estates of Godmersham and Goddenstone in Kent, and she knew of Humphrey Repton's improvements at Alderstrop, where her mother's cousin was rector. However, in Mansfield Park, she satirizes improvement in Mr. Rushworth's transformation of his old-fashioned house and gardens, Sotherton. Her own efforts at improvement along the lines of Mrs. Jennings' description of Brandon's garden are discussed in a letter to Cassandra about the garden and the house in Southampton. Sunday, 8 February 1807. The border under the terrace wall is clearing away to receive currants and gooseberry bushes, and a spot is found very proper for raspberries. That's so cool to have all these little glimpses into the life of Jane Austen through her work. Exactly what I call a nice old-fashioned place, full of comforts and conveniences, quite shut in with great garden walls that are covered with the best fruit trees in the country, and such a mulberry tree in one corner. Lord, how Charlotte and I did stuff How Charlotte and I did stuff the only time we were there. We just did stuff. Tea stuff and did stuff. Then there is a dovecote. Some delightful stew ponds. Stew ponds are fish ponds or tanks. That's what it says in the back. And a very pretty canal, and everything, in short, that one would wish for. And moreover, it is close to the church, and only a quarter of a mile from the Turnpike Road. Wow, this whole dialogue has more in the back. Turnpike Road. The first turnpike was built in 1663. The very first turnpike ever in the whole wide world was built in 1663. And by 1750, a basic network existed. Trusts were formed to turnpike roads, using the tolls to maintain and improve them so that they were passable by public and private coaches. Wow. Quarter mile from the turnpike road. So 'tis never dull, for if you only go and sit up in an old yew arbor behind the house, you may see all the carriages that pass along. Oh, 'tis a nice place. A butcher hard by in the village, and the parsonage house within a stone's throw. To my fancy, 1,000 times prettier than Barton Park, where they are forced to send 3 miles for their meat, and have not a neighbour nearer than your mother. Well, I shall spirit up the colonel as soon as I can. One shoulder of mutton, you know, drives another down. One shoulder of mutton. See John Ray, a collection of English proverbs. Proverb 128. One shoulder of mutton draws another down. More explanatory is John Swift's A Complete Collection of Genteel and Indigenous ingenuous conversation. Huh. I don't know. That's just what it says. It's just what it says in the book. Written down with stones from one shoulder matter drives another down. If we can but put Willoughby out ahead. Aye, if we can but do that, ma'am, said Elinor, we shall do very well with or without Colonel Brandon. And then rising, she went away to join Marianne, whom she found, as she expected, in her own room, leaning in silent misery over the small remains of a fire, which, till Elinor's entrance, had been her only light. God. Allergies. People sitting in the dark. Depression. You had better leave me, was all the notice that his sister received from her. I will leave you, said Elinor, if you will go to bed. But this, from the momentary perverseness of impatient suffering, she at first refused to do. Her sister's earnest, though gentle persuasion, however, soon softened her to compliance, and Elinor saw her lay her aching head on the pillow, and saw her, as she hoped, in a way to get some quiet rest before she left. In the drawing-room, whither she then repaired, she was soon joined by Mrs. Jennings with a wine-glass full of something in her hand. My dear, said she, entering, I have just recollected that I have some of the finest old Constantia wine. Ooh, it's in the back. What is it? A dessert wine from a farm near Cape Town, South Africa, called Constantia Farm, British rule of Cape. Began in 1795 and as a result of the wars with France. So this is a very early reference to this wine being available in England. Wow. Cool. Pill on her head, wine. Constantina wine in the house that ever was tasted, so I have brought a glass of it for your sister. My poor husband, he was fond of it. How fond he was of it, is what it says. Whenever he had a touch of his old colicky gout, he said it did him more good than anything else in the world. Do take it to your sister. Dear ma'am, replied Elinor, smiling at the difference of the compliments for which it was recommended. How good you are, but I have just left Marianne in bed, and I hope almost asleep, and as I think nothing will be of so much service to her as rest, if you will give me leave, I will drink the wine myself. Mrs. Jennings, though regretting that she had not been 5 minutes earlier, was satisfied with the compromise. And Elinor, as she swallowed the chief of it, reflected that, though its good effects on colicky gout were at present a little more important to her, its healing powers on a disappointed heart might be as reasonably tried on herself as on her sister. Colonel Brandon came in while the party were at tea, and by his manner of looking round the room for Marianne, Elinor immediately fancied that he neither expected nor wished to see her there, and, in short, that he was already aware of what occasioned her absence. Mrs. Jennings was not struck by the same thought, for soon after his entrance she walked across the room to the tea-table where Elinor presided, and whispered, The Colonel looks as grave as ever you see. He knows nothing of it. Do tell him, my dear. He shortly afterwards drew a chair close to hers, and with a look of which perfectly assured her of his good information, inquired after her sister. Marianne is not well, said she. She has been indisposed all day, and we have persuaded her to go to bed. Perhaps, then, he hastily replied, what I heard this morning may be. There may be more truth in it than I could believe possible at first. What did you hear? That a gentleman who I had reason to think, in short, that a man whom I knew to be engaged, but how shall I tell you? If you know it already, as surely you must, I may be spared. You mean, answered Elinor with forced calmness, Mr. Willoughby's marriage with Miss Grey. Yes, we do know it all. This seems to have been a day of general elucidation, for this very morning first unfolded it to us. Mr. Willoughby is unfathomable. Where did you hear it? In a stationer's shop in Pall Mall, where I had business. Ooh, Pall Mall's in the back too. Pall Mall is in the particularly genteel and wealthy area of St. James, the heartland of the Gentlemen's Club, and where Brandon had his lodgings. Ooh. Two ladies were waiting for their carriage, and one of them was giving the other an account of the intended match in a voice so little attempting concealment that it was impossible for me not to hear it all. The name of Willoughby, John Willoughby, frequently repeated, first caught my attention, and what followed was a positive assertion that everything was now finally settled respecting his marriage with Miss Grey. It was no longer to be a secret. It would take place within a few weeks, with many particulars of preparations and other matters. One thing especially I remember, because it served to identify the man still more. As soon as the ceremony was over, they were to go to Combe Magna, his seat in Somersetshire. My astonishment, but it would be impossible to describe what I felt. The communicative lady, I learnt on inquiry, for I stayed in the shop till they were gone, was a Mrs. Ellison, and that, as I have been since informed, is the name of Miss Grey's guardian. It is. But have you likewise heard that Miss Grey has £50,000? In that, if in anything, we may find an explanation. It may be so, but Willoughby is capable at least, I think. He stopped a moment, then added in a voice which seemed to distrust himself. And your sister, how did she... Her sufferings have been very severe. I have only to hope that they may be proportionably short. It is a most cruel affliction. Till yesterday, I believe she never doubted his regard, and even now perhaps, but I am almost convinced that he never was really attached to her. He has been very deceitful, and in some points there seems a hardness of heart about him. Ah, said Colonel Brandon, there is indeed. But your sister does not think. Your sister does not, I think you said so. She does not consider it quite as you do. You know her disposition, and may believe how eagerly she would still justify him if she could. He made no answer, and soon afterwards, by the removal of the tea things and the arrangements of the card parties, the subject was necessarily dropped. Mrs. Jennings, who had watched them with pleasure while they were talking, and who expected to see the effect of Miss Dashwood's communication in such an instantaneous gaiety on Colonel Brandon's side as might have become a man in the bloom of youth, of hope and happiness, saw him with amazement, remain the whole evening more serious and thoughtful than usual. I'm still in shock sometimes about how long the sentences truly are, and there were no periods in that whole. He made no answer to here is all one. It's just really wild. Well, and I was babbling and blabbling and babbling on and on and on in the beginning. So it is a little longer video. So if you're still with me, thank you so much for sticking with me this whole time. We are really challenging our attention spans on this day. The year of our Lord 2025. The 20th anniversary of Pride and Prejudice, the movie with Keira Knightley, and the 30th anniversary of Sense and Sensibility, this actual movie with Kate Winslet, Emma Thompson, Alan Rickman, Hugh Grant, and many other people who I actually don't know. And the BBC Pride and Prejudice miniseries. So maybe you guys can all go enjoy that this year sometime. You have until December 31st, 2025, so you've got a while. Hope you enjoyed, and happy reading whatever you are working on, and ta-da for now.